Hello and welcome to our participants. I can see the numbers going up rapidly, so we'll kick off the session right away. Massive welcome to the members of the Security Professionals Association. I'm delighted to be running another collaborative session with the Security Middle East magazine. Today in this webinar, we're going to be covering one of, I would argue, one of the most important topics in the security industry, and that is the skills gap across the Middle East. We've been running countless webinars, podcasts, and events throughout the region, and I think all security practitioners, information security officers, and senior leaders are concerned about plugging that gap in the security industry. And it's one of those multi-dimensional challenges where we, as a community, are looking for pathways, for ways of integrating the next generation of the workforce. But considering some of the technological advancements that are happening as well, it's sort of rewriting what the old playbook for professional development looks like. So we're in a really interesting period of time where the onset of technologies like AI and machine learning are disrupting what traditional job roles would look like as well. But I'm joined today by two of our world-class speakers. We've got Stephen T. Miller, who is a safety and security expert. He has been in the field for about 35 years, and he's focused specifically on the family offices and close protection, or as the Americans refer to as executive protection. So he's got a really kind of interesting physical security perspective to add to the discussion today. And then our second speaker, Khalid Alghamdi, who is the CEO of NOMD Security Solutions, with again almost 20 years of experience in the technological sides of safety and the security profession. He's led a variety of strategic planning and execution projects at Aramco, at the King Abdullah Financial District, and will be contributing in a lot of value to the discussions today. But as always, everyone, my name is Dan Norman. I'm the chair for the Security Middle East magazine and the regional director for the Information Security Forum globally. So I'm really excited to be involved in this conversation. It's something that I would say is a global problem, but regionally in the Middle East, focusing on the skills gap is something that every security practitioner is concerned about, not only from senior roles, but individuals coming up the corporate ladder looking for the next step. So look, if anyone has any questions, contribution and collaboration is key in these types of settings. So please do add your questions to the Q&A. We have got time at the first half of the sessions today where Stephen and Khalid will be presenting some of their findings and perspectives, but we'll hold the questions to the end and we'll endeavour to ask them towards the end of the session. But that's enough from me. I'm really excited to welcome Stephen T. Miller to the session today. Stephen, the floor is yours. Please take over.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the session this afternoon. Let me just get to my slideshow here. So we'll be looking at skills gap in the Middle East security industry. I'll just be going through some slides with you, no more, if you want to put it like a technical level. And what I want you to do here is, no matter who you are in the security organization, and security across the globe in the Middle East is really diverse, from your man guard to your CEOs of IT, cyber companies. So no matter who you are in the industry, I want you to go through this session, and then at the end of it, just be, I hope this makes you enthusiastic about how you can develop yourself and how you can develop the individuals in your teams. It's just really about how you can be the best you can. That's what I want to achieve from the session. So we'll look at what is the skills gap? Why do skills gaps occur? The impact of skills gaps, and there'll be it's an impact on the individual employee, on the organization, and actually on the region as a whole. And then how can we address the skills gaps? And in my specific line of expertise in close protection in the Middle East, in skills gaps that I have found in that particular industry. So what a skills gap is, it's really just the gap that exists between the skills that the employee has and what she needs to perform, he or she needs to perform a job. But it's not only to just perform the job, it's to perform the job well, and performing well is the crucial part. So the skills gap is depending on the job in question and the skills required. And like I said, I want you, when we go through the points, to relate it to your specific needs and your specific security field. So why do skills gaps occur? And to name but a few, let's tie in the company and employee. We look at the attitude. So one, large multinationals, large companies, they have their HR departments, they have policies and procedures in place, and they look at the CPD and they look at performance reviews, and they encourage staff to advance themselves. And then you get smaller companies which they're not really dedicated towards that. They're more focused on growing their business and they forget the employees. And then in all my years of training and assisting people, I found that it's vitally important. It's an employee's attitude. And it comes down to, for me, is a person really, is it just a job to you, or is it a passion, a calling? It's something that just, it drives you every day and you want to just learn more and advance yourself. Is the passage of time, whether you have degrees, masters, whether you have a doctorate, the world is evolving so quickly that potentially what you had, and if you're of my age, it dates back many years, and how things have evolved, and we need to have evolved with time. And technology advances literally on a daily basis, and trying to keep up with technology for many people is a difficult situation. There's changes in legislation, whether it be with governments, whether it be with governing bodies like SERA. Things change constantly. We need to keep abreast with those changes to the environment. And across the Middle East, even if you're just looking at high environment changes just from a physical aspect on a daily basis too, we need to evolve and keep up with that. And then you'll have clients' expectations and requirements, which at the start of a contract, there can be certain requirements and expectations, and as you're going through, those requirements can change, and we need to change and evolve with those requests and requirements. And then a big thing with skills gaps is it comes down to the investment of time and money. You know, you need to, if staff need to go away on courses, or even whether it be training in the office, they need to, the company needs to pay if they don't have internal training, an external trainer to come and do it. They're removing staff from their duties for a day, for a few days a week. So that's a big part of why some people are not investing. And then just the availability of courses, CPD, other upskilling programs. So the impact of skills gap and how it's hurting, let's look at both companies and the employees. So there's from a company perspective, when the skills gap, there's lower productivity, and maybe a manager has time to assist the staff and help them with their jobs. Increased performance issues where people are doing the work, but they're not doing it correctly, and things need to be changed and problems resolved. Then there can be decreased profits and higher operating costs due to lack of skilled employees can lead to the business not making the necessary sales and growth, which all companies, that's the bottom line, is that they want to sustain what they have and they want to grow their business to be financially viable. And then reduced competitiveness. You know, if you're not having a skilled team, the company is falling behind competitors, which impacts the company. It can impact the employees there too. And then from the employee side, there's an increased workload on staff who are proficient and need to cover for those who are less proficient. They need to pick up that slack. And from an employee's perspective, this low wage is associated with low skill, and then lacking the opportunities for promotion. So employees can't be promoted. They want a higher position, they want more money, but with lack of skills, this is not the case. Job losses and redundancies. Well, if a company, if you don't have the skills that the company needs, whether they be outsourcing or you're made redundant because you don't have the skills that are required, and then you're not competitive. If you were in the job seeking market, you need skills that are required and skills that are most probably necessary for the future. And then damage to reputation and personal brand, which, you know, there's niche markets in security, and a person can become renowned for not having the skills that are required for those niche markets. So how can we address the skills gap? So the main thing here is for companies and employees to meet in the middle and work together to come to solutions. You might have an employee who wants to do a certain course, and the company feels that course is not really appropriate for the needs of the company or the individual. So it's the two kind of marrying together and seeing what's in the best interest of both the company and the individual. So from a company perspective is to do a gap analysis, and you're identifying where the skills gaps are, you're documenting those skill gaps that you can, it's all identified, and you can improve your training processes. From a company perspective, you can see what's required, and by documenting skills gaps, you can see what are needed for each individual members of your team. So improved internal training programs, which both internal, and I'll go to the next slide, to work with external providers. So it's good to have internal training. If that can't fulfill needs, to bring external training. But I believe for certain companies and region, that training can't just be an off-the-shelf training. It needs to be bespoke training for requirements for that organization, for the individuals, for the region. And then a better recruitment practices, which whether it be agents or HR recruiting, finding skills and skills potentially for the future. So just improving your recruitment processes. And then an important thing is with anything in life is not looking at now, looking at where things are moving in the future, and trying to fill in those gaps for the future, and not just doing damage control now. So from an employee perspective, gap analysis, look at job openings in your specific field, see what recruiters are requiring. There's big digital leverage courses. With the pandemic, things have dramatically changed. There's a lot of online learning. There's a lot of online content. Just sifting through the content, which is good, suitable content for yourself. And then within an organization, approaching your manager, asking for secondments to other divisions, work with other people, maybe being mentored by someone, just to gain skills in other, upskill yourself and skills in other areas. Attending CPD courses and to formalize your training, and then partner with the employee. So on your performance reviews, seeing how your management team, how your company can take your skills forward, benefit both yourself and the company. So specifically looking now in something that I'm very familiar with, and I can tell you which problems existing in this field. In personal protection, there's lack of formalized training specific to the region. And if you're looking at operatives, there's highly skilled and trained operatives who can come from the US, the UK, other parts of the world. But we are in a unique environment here where some of those skills are not needed, but skills need to be evolved and changed to a particular environment. Let's call like the UAE, where your threats and risks are minimum here in countries that are some of the safest countries in the world. So with these close protection assignments, there's always a lack of planning and preparation. So there's A lot of times there's no briefings and debriefings on assignments. Coming from company and principal's perspective, there's lack of information, which causes a problem for you to prepare for assignments. And then with assignments, there will be two different types, where someone is just subcontracting to call it like an American corporate for a few days, and where someone is full-time with the principal and a family office, which when you're full-time with someone, you've understood, you've had the opportunity to understand all their needs and requirements. Where when you're part-time, if you're with a client for a principal for 3-4 days, that's not long enough for you to pick up actually how to work well, to have a gelled relationship with that person and their protection team. So the impacts in this particular area would be, it is a quality of service that one can provide. And if I'm not understanding a principal and what his needs and requirements are, I have lack of confidence going onto that assignment, and I have lack of confidence while I'm on that assignment, which can then ultimately result in safety and security shortages. There could be gaps there. I'm jeopardizing that particular operation. So the low level of principal satisfaction and comfort with the service that he gets, and the impact on the reputation of the company and operatives and the principals, their perception on what's happening in our actual region, where some people might feel, well, there's better quality in Europe or the US or in other countries, and we need to be keeping up with that. But so we don't want that negative impact on what's happening regionally. So existing skill gaps too is how can these gaps be addressed? So the main thing with any training though is what we spoke about earlier, can be financial. So offering affordable training that is region specific. And then once again, what can companies and employees do? Well, so companies subcontract to employ qualified staff. It can be pre-assignment briefings and awareness sessions. Same, even if it's on a specific job like this, as with any jobs where there's can be on-the-job mentoring training by experienced and qualified people, daily briefings, debriefings, and this in industry, discussing sort of expectations of clients and what we did well and what we can do better. And then specifically to the close protection industry would be just having basic license to operate, your first aid skills, or your certificates in date. If you're doing driving, advanced driving, having a minimum fitness requirement, soft skills specific for this region. So understanding the skill requirements for the Middle East, which is very niche and specific for principals that you're working with. And it's all about, no matter what industry, it's for you to own your own development and find the opportunities where you can advance yourself, and literally to be open-minded, no matter what qualifications you have, what experience you have. We learn each and every day from others. So just be open-minded and learn from others. And where people give constructive criticism, feedback, be open-minded, take that in. And so important to build on the knowledge and the culture. And I put there core privé. Core privé is something which I saw was regional specific in low threat and risk. And I trademarked a core privé name where you core to the private life of an individual in family offices. So taking away the hard skill, the immediate action drills of your protection in high risk environments, to be a really soft skill operator as concierge, logistics, management, convenience. Then what I'd like you to do, we'll just have a quick brief survey on Mentimeter. If you can scan the QR code there, and then we'll switch to Multimeter, and we'll go through some questions there. I'll give you 30 seconds per question, and we can get your feedback there, which in the Q&A later on, we can discuss that. Okay, so if we're looking at the first question, it's just a test question on how are you feeling? If you can just, I'll give you 30 seconds to post some of your comments. All right, so comments coming in, wonderful, optimistic, need some salary in learning. Thank you very much for your response there. 10 more seconds and we'll just move on to the next question. Okay, so our next question. Who do you think is responsible for the individual's upskilling and your professional development? So you have, if you just click on who you think is responsible there, and we'll give you 30 seconds for that. Okay, with 5 more seconds and we'll move on to the next one. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so what skills gap exists in your team? So as we went through the slides, if you can just quickly think and just a few words on what do you think what skills gap exists in your specific team? So excellently, technical knowledge, cybersecurity, communication is good, training, motivation. Perfect, perfect. Thank you, everyone. 5 more seconds and we'll move on to the next question. Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone. And the next question. What skills would you like to acquire? So also just briefly in a few words, what would you like to acquire where you feel you could have a skills gap? Okay, we'll give you 10 more seconds there and then we'll just move on again. Perfect there. Thank you, everyone. And there, how would you go about acquiring the skills you want? So if you can think about how do you think you could get the skills you need and require? Okay, that's good. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your ideas, and I'm sure even Dan can use some of the answers here to see what he could do, what his organization can do to help upskill the region too. Thank you, Dan. All right, perfect. Thank you, everyone. So that's the end, and I'll pass back to Dan and to our next speaker, Khalid. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. Thank you. A lot of food for thought, I would say, from the initial ideas gathering there. I've made some notes as well for us to cover that at the end to see if either of you have any recommendations. So thank you for giving your perspectives there, Stephen. I'd like to pass over to Khalid, who will give us his thoughts, and then we'll save some time at the end to cover off some of the questions. So Khalid, over to you.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to everybody. First of all, thanks, Steve, for a great informative talk and presentation. I truly enjoyed it, and it will be a tough act to follow. Before I start and share my screen, actually, I'd like to say I'm glad that Dan and Steve are here. For me, it's difficult to speak to a camera without live interaction. And it reminds me of those one-way video interview. I don't know if you've heard of them, where you record yourself answering questions of an interview. And it's a skill I'm yet to master. And I'll come back to that at the end. So let's start with why today's webinar, why this subject. All of our nations in the Middle East, I think, have ambitious to reach and visions to achieve, regardless of the pillars and the objectives with those visions, as some of them are social and others are economical. We all believe in these visions and strategic objectives. Now, if we don't have the right people with the right skills to execute those visions, we will not reach our goals. And as you know, most strategies fail in the execution phase. So why the subject is critical today? It is because we're not talking about skills gap today, but we're also talking about gaps that we will face in the future if we do not tackle them today and build the right skill sets. And this applies to all fields, not only safety and security. And excuse me, Dan and Steve and our great audience, I will be using the terminology safety and security instead of only security, because I believe there is a convergence between the two fields. Those of us who've been in the field firsthand can attest to the many commonalities between safety and security, as they share lots of the same challenges, concerns, and skills gap issues. So it's extremely critical, folks, to address skills gap, not only to enhance today's operation, but also to reach our ambitious future. Okay, let's talk about today and hopefully draw parallels on what we will face in the future. Of the many reasons of why skills gap occur, and I'll be building on the great presentation by Steve today. I do believe in the field of safety security, there are three main root causes, and in no way I claim this is an exhaustive list, but it's a start. So the first one being that organizations today, more than ever, are profit-oriented. And not only businesses and organizations, but also government entities. For instance, here in Saudi, the government sectors are required to generate revenue today. So let me explain the relationship here. Safety and security is a cost center and is almost always very costly because it's manpower intensive function so far. As businesses care more and more about profit, safety and security become a burden, and professionals in the field practicing the old ways of performing their duties have missed out on the train, unfortunately, toward becoming more of a business growth enabler rather than just a burden or a support function. The second reason is clearly the rapid development of technology in all fields, including safety and security. Our profession has always been based on human efforts. And in my opinion, I think the safety and security technologies have not been advancing since the Second World War. But today, generic technologies to solve operational challenges and enhance efficiency need to be part of our field. The third and last reason in this list is the fast movement toward an enterprise model in the majority of businesses, organizations, and government sectors. In my humble opinion, the safety and security have, in most of the time, been functioning independently, creating the need of being for enterprise skill sets. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the picture on the right side of the slide is a picture of a beautiful castle. It's to please your eyes, but it also has another function. So I learned that for over than 600 years, castles have played a main role in the British Empire. But the design of those evolved so much to cater for different needs. For instance, throughout this evolution, there was a major dispute between security needs and functionality needs. The security in charge person wanted less windows, obviously, and thicker walls, and the opposite was required by others who needed better quality of life. So the design and architecture improved in a very interesting way to cater for those needs, and the security personnel recognized their skills gap without the taller and thicker walls and changed their styles to cope. This is a very interesting subject, and I'll leave the details for the audience to do their research. And I could recommend some podcasts for that as well. Okay, now I want to shed some light on the gaps I see today. I'm certain that it will be changed in the future. And this is what we need to do as professionals, is predict what gaps we might have in the future based on the projected needs and develop towards them. So I believe there is a major technology and innovation gap in the safety and security field. We're not leveraging technology enough to better protect our assets and improve our efficiencies. I have to highlight here, and this is something I just remembered, technology will not totally replace security and safety professionals or practitioners, but it will, in the near future and today, augment the functions towards better decisions and effective actions. I read a report somewhere that what jobs will be replaced by AI in the near future, and for those of you who wonder, I don't think security and safety professionals are part of these jobs, and I think we're fine in that arena. I hope so, at least. But overall, we need to elevate the skills of being innovative and challenge technology makers to come up with solutions for on-the-ground challenges and concerns. Let me give you a very simple example. There is a well-known algorithm in the AI space that works to analyze skeleton postures. And it was originally designed for recognitions of persons and people. But now think about this. If a safety professional, for instance, who is very innovative, can take the same algorithm and apply it to detect fatigue in a workshop or in a plant to prevent safety incidents, that would be amazing. So the same goes for many AI algorithms that are designed for behavioral analysis, for instance, and I'll leave this for you to think of the many applied AI technologies examples that we can pivot today towards our field. Moving on, I see a major gap in identifying risks as well. For those of us who've done risk assessments, it is a bit strange to me how there is lots of copy and paste in these reports. So identifying current and future potential risks and plan accordingly is site and operational specific task, I think. I saw that firsthand when I worked for an industrial facility with controlled access and then worked for an open public place. The differences in the risks of those two different worlds are great, and professionals need to have the skills and knowledge to make that distinction. Another probably controversial skills to have is in the safety and security field is the knowledge of cybersecurity. And I saw some of the answers in Steve's survey talk about cybersecurity, and they were spot on, I think. Today, almost all of our systems are network enabled and network based. Today, safety and security systems are part of almost any IoT platform for smart cities, for smart buildings. Not having the needed skills and knowledge in the cybersecurity field may constrain our limits, our ability to understand and innovate in our field. Of course, let alone the fact that physical security is a basic need for cybersecurity to secure data centers and telecommunication rooms and other assets. The next gap, I think, is understanding the international standards and local regulations and how they applied in our facilities, in our specific operation. Maybe creating a truly unified international platform or framework, and then cater for local differences based on risks, specific risks and culture. In short, I think a playbook need to be developed here. The next one is safety and security operations are, very much dependent on situational awareness. I was always an advocate for giving the safety and security practitioners the room to make decisions based on their understanding of the situation. rather than putting strict rules and standard operating procedures. And don't get me wrong, procedures are important, but also the awareness and analysis of each situation is as important in my view. Finally, and I think, and this is maybe disputed by the audience, but I think it's a gap that we have today and we will have in the future. A major skill gap in the ability to put together an emergency response plan, practice it, and then execute it when needed. It is basic for many of us, but having the skills and the knowledge to deal with curveballs on the spot is something that we need to develop. I believe that we all agree on the advancement of the Japanese industrial abilities. And if I may remind you of the Fukushima nuclear power plant incident, it's very interesting, the events that happened in that incident and how a lot of the response team at the plant had to deal with many unexpected incidents and unexpected events. So there's a lot of lessons learned there. Okay, so I promise this is my last slide. It's just something to guide the discussion. So what should we do? I think we need to focus in the future. We bridge gaps for future needs. If we focus about today only, we're fighting fires. And that is not a good situation to be in. It starts with strategists, leaders. It starts with professionals with vast experience, and I could not highlight this more. Those who are able to leverage their experience, thought leadership, to predict future needs, then understand the real gap in skills and knowledge. Together with HR professionals and leaders, they can put solid plan to equip today's young professional with the skills to lead a secure and safe future. I remember when I was part of a big conglomerate once, and I was tasked to lead and co-lead a reorganizational project. The project focused on putting together a model of administrative structure for the future of the security organization within that same company. And I remember one main work stream of that project was training and development gap analysis and action plan. In that, we partnered with the HR experienced leaders to only try and put together an accurate prediction and projections of future needs based on the strategic business plan that we had, which eventually were the building blocks of the remaining of the exercise. Now, most importantly is the role of our young professionals who will be the leaders in the near future. I believe they will need to choose the overall profession. Sometimes it's not, in my view, advisable to be, the jack of all trades in the safety and security field. Then decide on a brand associated with their names. For instance, let's say be a risk assessment professional specialized in soft targets, hardening and assessments. After that, you'll need to acquire the experience by knowing the overall arching profession and mastering your brand. Of course, give yourself an exit to pivot in the future, but that's subject for another venue. Finally, validate that knowledge and skills with professional certificates, and more importantly, by being part of critical projects, even with a small role. It's very, very important. Now, if I can leave everyone with one message here, at a personal level, more than organizational level, acquiring the right skills and knowledge, being able to say, I've worked on this and I've learned that, coupled with a creative, innovative brains that accurately project future needs, will help us eliminate current and future skill set gaps in the industry. If you remember my comment at the beginning, and I said I'll come back to this, about the skills of one-way video interviews, think about this now. Had someone who was extremely visionary figured out 20 years ago that we would need to be able to speak to our smart devices, cameras, without the interaction of another person or ability to read reactions, like we speak to interact, we can interact with other people. Maybe I wouldn't have the skills gap in that arena today.
Thank you, Khalid, for your presentation as well there. I think there is a lot to unpackage here, and I've been furiously making notes whilst yourself and Stephen were presenting. So I'd love to welcome Stephen back as well to share his screen and come off mute, and we can jump into unpackaging some of the key themes throughout there. As always, anyone that's listening, please add your question to the Q&A, and we'll jump into some of those too. But I'd like to start sort of wide reaching, and then we can jump down into some of the key areas that you guys touched upon. And it's clear that you've both got expertise from the physical and sort of cyber domains of safety and security. And for me, some of the organizations we speak to are really concerned about that blending of operational technologies and IT, and not only the skill sets, but the control requirements that are required across both domains. And I think it makes for a really complex operating environment. And some of the things you were saying there, Khalid, about new technologies that are being weaved into the workplace too, it only makes the required skill sets of that next generation even more important to get right, you know? So in terms of a starting point, I'll ask Khalid, because I can see you on screen. Do you think we have enough people in the Middle East to fill the roles, or is it a problem with the right skill sets in the actual crop of candidates we have? What are your thoughts there? Okay,
great question, Dan. And I think this is tackling the issue of today from a different angle. Very interesting. Right to the answer, I think we have enough talents in the Middle East, but I think those talents need to be repurposed in the same field. So instead, for instance, instead of focusing on the traditional way of securing or ensuring the safety of our facility, we need to think innovatively of different solutions. I go back to saying the safety and security department, at least in my small world, have been, in a way or another, a hindrance to business growth. And today, I think, is coupled with repurposing the talents that we have, we need to redefine the function and redefine it to be an enabler to business growth rather than stopping the business growth in the day-to-day operation. The talents of today, the young people that we have, and people in my age as well, have the right skills, have the right knowledge, have the right experience and exposure to lots of operations in different fields within the safety and security, industrial, soft targets, you name it, malls, public places, cities. But it's a matter of refocusing the attention to how we do what we do and what to leverage. And I emphasize in technology here. We have lots of engineers, lots of smart people. Just take the generic technology and repurpose the technology to be a help in your function.
Yeah, very, very good answer there. But I think you've provided me with two questions around defined pathways, you know, because I think there's a lot to be said for collaboration between departments and learning and professional development in that sense. And the other question that I think we should explore as well is the redefinition of security. But I have a few questions there around how do we commoditize security? How do we use the tooling that we have in place to add value to sales or marketing or other sort of revenue generating arms of the business? which we can unpack. But I'd like to point a question towards you, Stephen, in terms of the pathways. One of your slides you mentioned was around professional development and taking ownership, really, of your own role. But how important do you think are defined pathways in security, in the security world? And I ask that both across the physical security and safety, but also across cyber. And are there any particular frameworks out there already that you know of or could lean on?
Well, even if you're looking at this, if you want to put it, defined pathways, like Khalid was saying, I believe there's a lot of skill and potential here, and it's working around the world and coming here. The region is really unique. It's diverse. You have so many nationalities here that defining pathways locally, for me, is an important thing, and developing local talent. And that's why I said in the presentation, important, and people will go into specific pathways. Like Khalid said, you maybe need to have more, break it down and have more specific interests. And it really comes down to, like Khalid's slide said, in choosing, you're choosing your career, choosing your pathway. You might be intrigued by security, but a certain security is a massive field. And you might want to go down the physical security side, the cyber security side, but find something that, and I'll always tell anyone, it's about being passionate, because if you are passionate about something, you will, it's like a sportsman. He's the world's best sportsman because he practices every day. He's passionate about his sport, and it takes him to the top of his game. And I believe the employment in the workplace is the same too. If you're passionate, you're not on Facebook or YouTube or doing things where you could be substituting it with social media content which is informative. And so you're taking in knowledge instead of just sort of wasting that time and pursuing down certain pathways that you are totally passionate about. And you look at that, and if you meet people and you discuss what they do for a living, or if you discuss their children or something that they're passionate about, they light up, and you can't stop them talking and enthusiastic. And that's how someone's career and their chosen pathway must be. And and I'll give you an example. I was in IT for 17 years, duly running a physical security side, and after 17 years, I decided to make a career change and pursue something else that was more my passion. So my message there is to develop somewhere that you, even if you have to get out of your comfort zone and go something else, but something that you're passionate about and you feel you can contribute to the safety and security. And ultimately, Khalid will testify to that particularly safety and security people, everyone does, but with niche skills that come from safety and security, in firefighting, first aid, things like this, you contribute immensely to society as well. And that's an important thing, is the safety and security in the region contribute to society and make society a better place. All around the world, say the security guys, the registrations that they have, like Sierra, like the SIA in the UK, Syria in South Africa, work hand in hand with the government and police to make society a safer and better place. And so that's my message ultimately too, is how can we benefit not only the industry, but society in general?
Yeah, no, it's a very, very good answer. But my initial thinking when it comes to identifying passions and knowing what sort of makes someone's eyes light up, and then sort of having that direction about how having to get from A to B, I think it's quite challenging for an individual that doesn't have either a HR department that can explain or intrigue, or having a clear pathway. So I'll ask another question to Khalid to bring him in, is what is the role of HR in helping with career development of the security practitioner? Because I've spoken to hundreds of individuals that make career changes, and I'm really struggling to identify who helped them, who gave them the incentive, or what intrigued them about making that career change, you know? Is it HR? Is it the responsibility of the individual? Is it mentors? Is it security leaders, or maybe all of the above? What are your thoughts, Khalid?
Well, I think, and I hope we don't have lots of HR professionals in the audience, but I think HR only give you the basic tools, and it's critical. It's important to have those basic tools, but it is the responsibility of the individual to know, you know, their passion, what they want to do. And it's more of a responsibility to the mentors and leaders, because, you know, if you leave that safety and security professional alienated, outside the main strategy, outside the main picture, what we want to do and what your role is to achieve that goal, then it's really, and that's an issue in today's market, at least in Saudi. It really becomes a transit job, and that career shift that you talked about, Dan and Steve talked about, it happens very quickly and in very early age. Overall career shift is something that, or knowing what you want to do, is something that does not, there's no specific age, there's no specific point of the career where you know what you want to do. Some of us, you know, do it in their 50s, in their 40s, or very early in the career. But talking about the skills and about your comments in the previous question, Dan, is very important about redefinition of the function to become not a cost center, not a burden, but commercializing safety and security, making it a commodity within any facility. And let me, and I think everybody agrees here, the security and the safety department is, if not the most, one of the most departments that owns data. How they own data? They have all the surveillance equipment, they have all the access control system equipment. They know, or they own and collect so much data that if we, and that's what Steve mentioned about that niche skill that we need today, young professionals need to focus on. If we can use those data and commercialize the data, because the data today is invaluable. It's something that, you know, it's the target of any business. And I'll give one small example of this. We've been able in the technology market today, and very proud of that, to find that intersection between, for example, marketing and security. And it basically is, you know, if you put a screen up and you sell that marketing space to brands to project their products to customers, at the same time you're putting your cameras in the screen and you're watching the faces, you're collecting data and the foot traffic and everything. So you're making money selling the space for the brands. You're selling also data to the brands in terms of who's interested in this project. Is a man, is a woman, is a young girl or boy, you know, all of this data can be sold. And this is where today's professional and young professional coming into the field need to, you know, reprogram that hardwired idea of, you know, being a security at the gate, or being an investigator, or, you know, the old ways of doing the business, to this new way where you can generate revenue, make yourself important, and be part of the vision.
It's a really good point, and it's quite a refreshing perspective, actually, when you think about pivoting security towards marketing or sales or revenue generating arms of the business, because we get this all the time, that security is perceived as a cost center. And I think that has a subsequent impact on the development of security leaders up towards the C-suite, because individuals that are in that C-suite or in the board typically are revenue generating, idea generating parts of the business. So I think my follow-up question there, Khalid, is where do you start? How do you begin pivoting towards revenue generation away from security? Because in my mind, I think that's the responsibility of marketing. How do you begin that dialogue with the other leaders that are outside of security?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. Look, it's really organization specific, but what I see is if you're able as a security leader, safety leader, if you're able to break the silos that most organizations today are experiencing, and be within the functions that is not your function, then you can pinpoint and find out the commonality between the two functions, and then pivot towards, you know, either commercializing the data or coming up with different ideas. And you know, it's really, with the fear of sounding cliche, but it's really about thinking out of the box. There is no bad idea today. And I've seen that firsthand in many projects. I mean, you know, I don't think this is confidential anymore, but the Mexican-US wall, you know, originally it was just a wall. It was an actual, you know, cement or fence wall, a physical wall. And then the company that was awarded to put that segregation, let's say, it became a virtual thing. It's not a wall. It's a virtual virtual wall without actual bricks or fence or anything. And you know, kudos to the person who came up with the idea and was able to convince the government to actually buy it. So I'm sorry, I hope I answered that question. It's a very important question, but it is organizational specific. And we today, we need to find that opportunity where we you know, jump in, be important, and be part of the business to enable it to grow, rather than just stopping everything from growing.
Yeah, no, I think one of the main challenges that security leaders have, both across physical and the digital domains, is having a seat at that top table. And I completely agree with you. If you can think outside the box and have creative solutions for taking a process or a system or a piece of technology that you have responsibility for that can add additional value, then that trust and relationship between the revenue generating arms of the business and security will grow. I'm conscious we've got a lot of really good questions coming in from the audience here. Specifically Leon, one of his questions, it's not really a question, it's more of a statement, but I think we can turn this into a question. And I'll ask Stephen this particular angle. And I actually think you can probably add a lot of value in terms of your own professional development, because you mentioned you had a bit of a career change. Now, Leon's question is, he thinks of skills development as following the guidance of the business per se. So is there a regulatory requirement, organizational objectives, mergers, or changes in the operating environment that require security? So I read that as being, if a change happens in the company, then people are pushed down certain routes or roles, and they might need to be trained in certain other skill sets in order to fulfill the business requirement. But Stephen, what do you think in terms of professional development? What were your sort of sentiments when you made your change? Was it driven externally by anything, or was it an intrinsic desire to change?
I think there were multiple things. One, intrinsic. I had a passion with something else, and it came from the CEO of the company, who at a seminar, he said, you know, if you wake up and you look in the mirror that morning and you can't bear to take yourself to work that day, it's time for a change. and that was maybe my tipping point. And I decided to make that change. And sometimes, let's say, a change is a lot individual, and you can't rely on the company or anything else. Yes, it takes a lot of your time. There's a lot of money involved in, if you wanted to make a change. It's difficult for people to maybe make a change if they really want to. You know, once you've set yourself up and you have a house, a car, a family, you can't just make a career change. A career change sometimes is maybe a down, you know, dropping down in salary. So how do you make that change? You've got to be in that position, and that change really comes from yourself to try and push that, get that happiness, finding that happiness. We spend more time at work than we do at home and with family. We need to make that work environment a happy environment for ourselves. And to go into what you and Khalid were saying previously, 100% in security can contribute in changing many things, but there also has to be the changes you were talking about in making security sort of like commercially viable comes from security itself. Sadly, in the security industry, there's still many people who have that mindset of I'm security, and whether it be a security guard with facilities, it falls under facilities of a company, and facilities say, can you facilitate the moving of the office furniture tonight? Once a week, we need you to do a health and safety audit of the building. Can you do reception duties for 2 hours before your shift starts? When the reception lady leaves, all these things you need to fit in. And that's why I said there too, I trademarked the corp privé, where it's not, I'm no longer close protection. I'm providing 2, 3, 4, 5% protection. Many clients wouldn't want to use you because you're solely the mentality from many years ago. I don't carry handbags, I don't carry bags, I don't do shopping, I am just security. Now, and especially in a region like this where there's low threat and risks in a lot of countries, you're the shopper, you're the concierge, you're the babysitter, you're the personal assistant, you do anything and everything, you facilitate logistics of the family, and that makes you viable to work for them instead of just being security, because now you're covering 5, 6, 7 roles. It's stretching you really thin, but you become just core to that family and not just from a security perspective. So you make yourself employable.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I think the next sort of area that I'd like to explore is sort of practical recommendations, because I can see from a lot of the questions in the Q&A are questions around realistically, what types of skills do you need to be successful now as a security person? Because I think that builds on what you were saying there, Stephen, is that it's not just classic security training. What are the particular skill sets or attitudes that you would look for in a good candidate, and why?
So, well, depending on fields, so I'll relate it back to what I'm in sort of niche in, is yes, you can go and get a close protection, executive protection course, whether it be 4 weeks, 12 weeks. Then you take, well, for this region, well, you don't need any kind of firearms involvement with that. So looking at what's bespoke and unique to the region. Then besides me doing, call it my foundation training, I went in, like specifically for myself, I went and did medical training. I went and did like personal training, sports masseur, advanced driving, first aid. So just branching out that even when a client is looking at utilizing your skills, and it doesn't even, let's say, come down to the skills of what you have studied and learned. It could be your hobbies, whether you playing paddle or cycling, or you have skills there that can fit in with, particularly in close protection, with the principle that you're working with. And it creates a bond between you and that principle, whether it's the love of animals, the love of sport, whatever. So those skills which you would think aren't necessarily skills can come into play. But on other fields, just looking at it, you would, like I said in the presentation, maybe look at what jobs have been advertised and seeing if you like that specific line of work, you want to go down that line, see what people are looking for, and ultimately finding someone who's prepared to mentor you, guide you, point you in the right direction. Things that might not be available on the internet, this person can just give you their personal perspective. And Khalid will tell you, like this come with age, you need to not necessarily find an older mentor, but where there's been all the years of experience, wisdom, learning, and you get people like Khalid and myself who we want to advance and we want to help, and it's not necessarily a financial thing. We want to see the industry grow, and we want to see more, let's call it respect given to the security industry, and not the historical thing of security, and that's why security, when it comes to companies cutting budgets, safety security is out the door first. I think the security industry has grown over the years and become something that people in the industry should be really proud of and can be proud of how it's evolved and how it's become a really reputable industry.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And Khalid, what are your thoughts there as well from the sort of cyber technical angle as well? Are there any particular skill sets or attitudes you look for in candidates?
Of course. I think, yeah, besides being up to date when it comes to technology and what technology makers are exploring, the R&D sector of that space, security professionals or safety and security professionals need to have the right interpersonal skills. You know, when you talk about safety and security, they're probably the first person you meet when you go into any other facility, and the last person you say bye to when you're leaving. So that interpersonal skills, then it weaves into, when you have that right skill to deal with people, to interact with people, it helps your ability to identify risks, current risks or future risks. Another skill I was thinking about when Steve was talking is you know, oh, by the way, Steve, you're saying that you cover 7 jobs when you're doing executive, but you get to travel a lot, so that's a good side of the story. Another one is process development and, you know, process flow identification. That's very important. The nature of safety and security function is very process oriented, very step by step, which we can argue I don't like that too much, but you need to be able to look at the process, improve it, and then identify if there are flaws, if there are any weak spots in that process as a security or safety professionals. You know, skill sets today, Dan, to your point, is I can go on and on in certain skills that I look for when I meet candidates or in the hiring process. But again, it's job specific. It's what they want them to do. But it's not only today, it's the future. So to young professionals, from this question, I think you need to be able to understand where the future is going and then build yourself towards that future. So you're invaluable when it comes to 5 years from now, where they're looking for that specific function that you projected. You're already there, you're already trained, have certain experience for it. For example, I don't think, looking at the major projects that we're doing in the Middle East, you know, a closed environment when it comes to security with access control and all of that will be very limited to industrial facility. But most of those projects will look for people who are able to secure an open space, a soft target, put a security framework or a safety framework that is welcoming for visitors and customers to come in, yet without jeopardizing the safety and security of the place. This is the area that we need to think of as young professionals, or today's professionals, how to improve that and how to contribute to that, and what skills do we need to be able to cover that gap or that need.
Yeah, I think both your points are very, very helpful. I think from my perspective, I typically think of generalists that are general security practitioners. You know, that could be a physical security person, or it could be an information security or a cyber security person. And then over time, these specialisms appear that can let you transfer between physical and digital, or vice versa. And over time, you begin building out your skill sets. There's more sort of strings to your bow, and then more opportunities arise. You know, you have to be inquisitive, you have to search for opportunities, but I think there's an important role from HR, mentors in your organization, senior leaders to shine a light on potential opportunities that are out there. And I can see some questions coming in around bespoke training or certifications, degrees, courses. And honestly, there are thousands of courses out there, you know, in the information security domain, the CISMs, CISPs, all of those types of qualifications are fairly easy to be involved with and get. I assume there's a lot in physical security as well. I think Stephen has, as mentioned, has done a variety of different types of training. So I think it's about being inquisitive and identifying what you need to add value to your organization, but also what are you actually interested in? What topic areas wake you up in the morning? What skill sets do you want to have in order to make that next career progression, you know? So there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. I'm very conscious of the time, guys. So I want to just very quickly look forward to the future, because I think we've got a lot now that we can work on and a lot of recommendations that the people on the line can look to. But looking forward and looking at the technology that's coming in, we look at AI, quantum computing, for example, lots of different sort of technological advancements in weaponry. In the future of our field, security, do you think the skills required are going to change so rapidly and so intensely that we as humans won't be needed? Or do you think we'll be in a position where we're kind of managing the technology itself? Like, what do you think the skill sets of the future will be, and how can we as an industry prepare for that? And Khalid, I'll go to you first, and then I'll hand over to Stephen.
Of course, very interesting question. The report, I think I mentioned in my presentation, I think it was developed by Harvard, I believe, and they were looking at jobs that are most likely be replaced with an AI robotic system in the near future. And believe it or not, CEOs and religious leaders are the most difficult ones to be replaced. So, but when it comes to safety and security, again, I do not believe that they will be totally replaced by any robotic or AI or quantum computer system in the future, because it's really incident specific, it's people specific. An AI can learn so much. Of course, theoretically, you can put an AI model into lots of learning and put all the situations that happen in the world, and it will be the most super security person or safety person. But then again, there are things that the AI cannot predict or expect when it comes to dealing with people, and security and safety deal with people a lot. To your point, Dan, and to your question, what skills in the future, how the game field will be changed, how things will look like. In my view, I think the main skills, so your normal security and safety operations, where you have security guards all over or safety inspectors all over and looking at things and doing things manually, that will change into a very smart system in the background that is equipped with so many surveillance sensors and cameras and anything that you can think in the future. And that will run probably automatically with really small human interaction, where the skills for that person running that system needs to be technical, needs to be they need to be very versed with the system that they're running, be able to advance it. So that's programming, that's IT, that's process development, and lots of other skills in that field. And then the other skill that you'll have is neutralizing the incident or reacting to the incident. So you'll have people going to the field when an incident happened, when the system tells them that there is an incident, and they just respond to that incident, whether it be executive protection, whether it be, and I don't mean to step onto your toes, Steve, sorry, but whether it be normal security or access control or anything, you'll have people in the background just responding to an incident, and maybe that will change in the not so soon future into robots responding, I don't know. But I think those are the two main skills, where you have engineers, technical people running a system that is autonomous in a way or another, and then you have skilled tactical people being able to respond to an incident when it happens.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Khalid. Yeah, I think technology is only going to support individuals over the next 3 to 5 years. I think from what we see in the media, I think artificial intelligence and machine learning is so overblown in terms of its capability. And I don't personally think that AI will replace everyone. I think if you look at technological advancement throughout history, everyone has sort of a fear that jobs will be replaced. I think anything that can be automated will be, but something that requires sort of a human touch that physical security and in-person relations need, I don't think it will be replaced by robots anytime soon. But Stephen, what are your thoughts? I mean, you're closer to this than I, but what do you think the future of this field will look like?
Yes, exactly what you said. I believe all this technology will come in, and I've seen how it's coming over the years, there to assist security. If you can put it, make their life more convenient, easier. Security have to evolve with that technology. Then you can't just be the meet and greet guy on the ground. You have to have a lot of IT skills to run systems where you maybe you have a hub and you're remotely monitoring numerous data centers around the world, and if something goes wrong there, you're contacting local security companies to respond to alarms or situations. So in certain industries, the technology will not totally get rid of manpower, will reduce manpower, and then 100%, like both you and Khalid have said throughout this webinar, in that nothing beats that human interaction. And you take, so with that too, it's also when you upskill or you mentor someone, you should also be able to see that that person has certain skills and talents, and that even if even comes down to guarding, if I have 20 guards and you're putting them in different posts, you'll know what drives each person, what's their nature, character, personality, and the friendly, happy, smiley guy you put in on the front door to meet and greet people, to give him that, wow, this corporate building is lovely. You don't want the sad, miserable guy there. So, to utilize people, but the technology will never get rid of people. You just need that human interaction. As man is a person who, we want to go sit at the coffee shops and see other people, deal with other people. The pandemic brought that out in a lot of people. There was a lot of mental health issues when people are not dealing with people. People still, it's the way we created is to need and want human interaction. And that will always, I believe, be a part of the safety and security industries. It's inherent in mankind.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there, Stephen. And yeah, thank you so much to you both for your feedback, for your insights into the skill shortage in the region. I think personally, there's a lot of areas of improvement when it comes to training, developing professional pathways, giving incentives to security people to stay in the industry. But I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I think if security leaders like yourselves continue to challenge the people coming through, then we'll be heading in the right direction. So look, we've been on the line for about an hour and 20 minutes, which is crazy to me. And I'm so happy that everyone stayed online. We haven't had anyone drop off, which is fantastic. But I would just like to thank you both for presenting and answering the questions. I'd like to thank the audience for participating, and thank you for providing such detailed and challenging questions. I believe I'll be handing back over to Liz at the Security Professionals Association to close. But from me, Dan Norman, thank you so much for your time, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you all again very soon on hopefully another webinar. So thank you for your time, and have a fantastic week.
Thank you to Khalid and Stephen for presenting this and making this day possible. Thanks to the Security Middle East team for coordinating and giving us such a lovely topic. This is when SME decided that we should talk about the skills gap. And I'm so happy we've taken up this topic. All our members, good afternoon to all of you. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. And For those of you who don't know me, I am Liz. I head the Education, Training and Awareness Office of the SPA committee and the SPA group. And what I want you all to understand is I'm right slap in the middle of the skills gap. And there are lots of topics that are discussed quite often about the skills gap. And we are trying to bridge it. Sira is trying to introduce a lot of courses, and we are all the time having meetings because I also head one of the training centers that licenses guards here. This afternoon has been very insightful, and I would want everyone to understand one thing. The skills gap is definitely a matter of concern in this region, and specifically our industry, because our industry is made up of lots of experienced people, but not maybe that did not have a chance to get qualified because they get into this industry very early on. Okay, so you get certified, you need to get qualified to close that skills gap. And one other way, of course, we are addressing it, the HRs of all organizations are addressing it, training centers are addressing it, everything is happening. But there's one way to actually close that skills gap, and that is you. You, the members of SPA. One way is to invite all your industry experts to come out here and speak up and express your views, just like Stephen and Khalid did, right? So we are inviting all of you to contribute, write to us, write to the, ISRA is always on hand, available to get in your emails. Write to us about your interest on expressing your thoughts and views through our webinars and workshops. So thank you very much. Thanks all of you once again, and have a great day. Good day. Thank you.